The dusty wind swept across the barren land as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky with streaks of crimson and gold. The quiet town of Willow Creek was preparing for nightfall, lanterns flickering in the windows, the saloon piano echoing through the streets. But out by the old river trail, something darker stirred, something that would change one man's soul forever. Silas Grant, the silent cowboy of the frontier, was known across towns for his calm demeanor and wordless nature. He was a man who carried his past like a shadow, haunted by mistakes, weighed down by loss. Folks said he'd once been a lawman, but after tragedy struck, he'd laid down his badge and his voice. He lived alone, spoke to no one, and trusted even fewer. That evening, as he rode past the willows, his horse snorted nervously. A sound cut through the still air, a cry, soft at first but trembling with terror. He dismounted quickly, his instincts kicking in, and followed the sound through the tall reeds near the riverbank. What he found froze his blood. A young girl, barely in her teens, was on the ground, trembling. Her dress was torn, her hands bruised, and her eyes, those eyes held more pain than any soul should bear. Standing over her were two rough men, their laughter cruel, their intentions vile. One raised his hand to strike her again when a gun cocked in the silence. "That's enough," came a voice low and sharp. The two men turned to find Silas standing there, revolver in hand, eyes burning with a quiet rage. "Walk away," he said. They hesitated, then scoffed. "Ain't your business, cowboy." The next second was faster than thought. One man reached for his weapon, but Silas fired. The sound echoed through the canyon, and the second man ran for his life. The cowboy lowered his gun slowly, his breath heavy. He turned to the girl, who stared at him like she'd seen an angel and a ghost all at once. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Don't beat me. I'm already hurt." Silas knelt beside her, his heart twisting. "I ain't gonna hurt you," he said softly, surprising even himself. For years he hadn't spoken more than a few words, but something in her eyes, innocence, shattered too soon, cracked the wall around his heart. He gently wrapped his coat around her trembling shoulders. "You're safe now." She began to sob, her tears falling freely. And Silas did something he hadn't done in years. He reached out, letting her cry into his chest as the night wrapped around them both. By dawn, he had brought her to his small cabin at the edge of the valley. He cleaned her wounds, gave her food, and let her rest by the fire. When she woke, she told him her name was Eliza. Her father had died in the mines, and the men who'd hurt her were hired hands from the ranch she worked at, men who thought they could do anything and get away with it. Silas listened in silence, his jaw tight, eyes cold. He knew what had to be done. That night he rode back into town, not for vengeance, but for justice. When the sheriff refused to act, calling the men good workers, Silas placed his old badge on the table. "Then I'll act," he said quietly. The town fell silent as he rode out again. The following days were filled with whispers. Some said the silent cowboy had gone mad. Others said he was on a mission of redemption. But when the two men were found miles out in the desert, alive but bound and turned over to the circuit judge, everyone knew the old lawman was back. Yet Silas didn't return to glory or thanks. He went back to his cabin where Eliza waited, mending her spirit bit by bit. Over time, she smiled again, her laughter soft and pure like spring rain. And with every smile, something inside Silas healed too. The man who'd once buried his voice began to speak again, not with many words, but with kindness, protection, and quiet strength. He taught her to ride, to read, and to never fear her scars. "Scars don't make you weak," he told her one evening as the sun dipped low. "They prove you survived." Months passed, and the legend of the silent cowboy spread once more. But to Silas, none of it mattered. What mattered was that a broken soul had found hope again, and in saving her, he'd saved himself. As they stood by the river where it all began, the wind carried her laughter, and for the first time in years, Silas smiled, a real unguarded smile. He realized then that sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought with guns but with compassion. The story of Silas Grant and the girl named Eliza became one whispered across the plains, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of the world, kindness can spark redemption. It teaches us that a single act of courage can change not just one life but two. And if you've felt moved by their story, if you believe that even the hardest hearts can heal when shown compassion, then take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Join us for more tales of courage, love, and redemption from the Wild West. Stories that remind us that hope never dies, and even the silent can find their voice again.